Hi, welcome to the Small Shed. Today I'm making a push stick for a Woodworking UK Facebook group challenge. See you in a minute. Now the challenge came up on the Woodworking UK Facebook group the other day to make a push stick. It's a challenge, I think, with little or no prizes, but I like these things in that they spur you into doing something different, and in this case something that I probably need anyway. I've got a little push stick that I won at Maker Central last year, which is very nice and beautifully made, but in all honesty, A, I wouldn't want to spoil it, and B, it's probably not that practical. I also got some of the Plywood Woodworking UK push sticks that they made, and they are okay, but I'm growing to the impression that I prefer the ones that are shaped like a plane, that push down on the front of the timber. The problem with the normal push stick is that if you're pushing down on a piece of timber with just a push stick, the front edge can do all sorts of weird stuff and move around while you're pushing at the back, whereas the ones that are shaped like a plane with a little cutout and a notch at the back, you push that down onto the piece of wood and then you can put pressure down, which is holding that piece much more firmly, and push it through. So that's it. It's just a little bit of nonsense, but it may well be a useful tool for me anyway. So I'm just going to have a look up in the wood store up above the ceiling here and see if we can find a bit of scrap. I want to make the whole thing out of stuff that I've got already. I don't think it's a big job, but I have looked up a couple of plans on YouTube, and I've found a design that I like, and it'll give me a chance to try out one or two things. It involves cutting one of the pieces of wood in half, probably, to get it thin enough, and a bit of thicknessing, that sort of thing. All things that I've got the equipment here, but I tend to normally run to men in sheds and use theirs. The shed's working a lot better, it's a lot tidier now, so I think it's time to start and use some of the toys. Let's have a look in the roof first. Now the majority of this timber is stuff I've got from the Worcester Recycling Exchange. It's mainly tulip wood. A bit of plywood over there. I tend to try and keep the sheet materials over that side, although it's all getting a bit mixed up and corrupted. There's some nice tulip wood which comes from one of the kitchen suppliers. I had got a nice piece of oak that could well be a useful, it's the right shape almost for a push stick, and it's something that I've accumulated from somewhere. It's an odd shape, but in this instance it's an ideal shape, so I think we'll get that one down, and I want to contrast that with something a bit darker. Got some Sapele, I think it is, redwood off the old conservatory. I don't know what else oh yes, there's a piece of stuff that's come from the kitchen suppliers at the Resource Exchange, which I think might be walnut. It's to the same profile as a lot of the timbers that they use for door making in kitchen units, but in this instance it's a hardwood, and I think it's probably walnut, or it certainly looks that way, and it's cost me the great sum of 28p. So we'll have that as well, and I think that will probably do me. Excellent. Now I've downloaded a plan from King's Fine Woodworking Incorporated. It was a free download. It's just something that struck me as being attractive, aesthetically pleasing, and something that would test me more than cutting out a bit of plywood. It's basically, they're using a something like Padauk or something either side of a maple or alder or something, and I thought I'd follow the same sort of principles. There's a stop on the back which is walnut they've got, and I think I should be doing both the sides and the back with that. Right, well, we're fairly close with the limit on the bandsaw I've got, but it will fit under there just. I've got a blade that I don't really know anything about because it came with the saw when I bought it second hand. Probably could do with a few less teeth as I'm cutting lengthways down the timber, but we'll see how it goes. Well, that's done the job. Bit of a struggle. It is pretty much on its limits, but it is interesting that as far as I can see it's pretty consistent in width. So I'm just going to get this now planed up or thicknessed. Right, so we've got 2 pieces thicknessed out at 8mm, which is good. It's the first time the planer thickness has been used, so that's a good start. The whole point of these challenges is to get you doing things that you're not normally doing. I've got to join the timber for the main body of the thing, but I've put a plain handle shape onto it. Right, I've just planed the faces, jointed those, so that's a nice solid joint there. I'm going to glue that up now, and after that we'll just bandsaw the shape out, but I need it to be roughly glued up and set before I start bandsawing, so I just thought I'd get that done. Nice tight joint. Now there's also a bit of an unbox in this. I've just received these drills from Banggood that I picked up from the Andy at Manor Wood. He recommended them or pointed them out the other day on something he was building. I would never normally consider tapping wood, but he was happily doing it, and if he's happy to do it, I'm more than happy to do it. So I've got some of these. They're basically a drill bit. Starts with a drill bit that's slightly less, obviously, the tapping size for whatever hole it is you're doing, and then it continues with a tap itself. So we're going to have a go at tapping these out. I've got the bolts from some spare ones I've got left over from the metal carts I've been building. I think they're M8s. The problem with putting an insert in is that you've run a risk, because it's that much bigger, for any given size bolt of splitting the timber really. So now I've got some pilot holes drilled in the end of the push stick. I'll tap those out, drill out to a larger size the back plate that I've now made, and I will then just screw that on. Chestnut micro crystalline wax that I've used on bits of wood turning that I've done. Not much, but yeah.
As covered is the issue of the Starling was found dead on the road in Anglesey. We'll do that next.
Right, well that's finished the push stick. It might not be the best push stick in the world. I don't even know whether it'll work, but it seems to be what I wanted. It gives you that push forward on the tip of the thing that you're pushing through the saw or even the router. I would probably need something narrower for running thin strips through, but we'll worry about that another day. But it marks a number of firsts for the small shed. This is the first time in the small shed, and indeed probably ever really, that I've done a proper, what I call a proper wood project, using hardwood and shaping it rather than CLS timber and making a shed. So from that point of view it's been quite rewarding. It's nice to have that tactile feel on something like that that's better than softwood effectively. So that's the first. It's the first thing that I've done post the tidy up after Christmas, and I have to say that's working well. Every time I've gone to get anything, router bit or bolts or anything like that, I've been able to get at them quickly and without too much disruption, whereas before I was suffering with all sorts of problems having to get things out to get at other things. It's the first time I've used the new layout in the shed, and that's taken 18 months to get there. And again, that's been successful. It's been far more easy to use the sander behind me than previously when I had a job to get at it. It's also easier to pull the planer out to get at the sander or to use the planer. It's the first time I've used the planer, so that's been worthwhile from that point of view, and that seems to have gone okay. And the thicknesser on it, of course. It's the first time that I've been using the dust extraction pretty much on everything that I've done, every task that I've undertaken, and it's certainly the first time that the little air quality monitor has not gone red with problems. Normally when you get over certain levels of particulates, the readout turns red. It's done that twice today. Once when I sprayed cellulose, which is hardly surprising. There were no windows open or anything like that, and I put the little air scrubber on and that went pretty quickly. And once when I used the little laser at the end, and again that's something that I know about. I've got the door open and there is something in hand to deal with that later. But as regards the day-to-day sanding, planing, everything else, yes, I've had cleaning up to do, particularly that planer thicknesser is a nightmare, but they're fairly large chunks. But with regards to the sanding and everything else, it seems to have kept the levels of dust down to something that's far more acceptable than before, when it was just horrendous. First time I've used that little Ryobi router, the battery operated one. That's gone well. It's done what I wanted of it, and it's been a nice little tool, felt nice in my hand, so that was another first. And it's the first time I've used the laser engraver since I've had the new one back that actually works properly, and we've put the little logo on the bottom of the push stick. That was originally what I intended to get it for, just putting little brands on rather than buying a brand. That way I can actually adapt the size of the logo to the exact size that I want. In that case I wanted it 18mm wide to go between the two hardwood walnut sides, and it's gone in there pretty well. So a lot of firsts. I'm pleased purely and simply because it's got me doing proper woodworking. Hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll hopefully get some more different things done in the shed, and I'll see you then. Bye.